Hello and welcome to an emergency podcast for the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. John Mateer, if you have missed the news, expected to miss a substantial amount of time with a thumb injury, surgery to take place tomorrow in Los Angeles. Pretty brutal news for the Sooners that were, riding high 4-0. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, though, we're going to talk through this. Normally, I just introduce you as Jamison Maxwell, but you are, in fact, Dr. Jamison Maxwell. You are a doctor. This isn't like a Dr. Lou bit. You are a legitimate physician. And look, for the Sooner fans who have been out here dooming and glooming and just wanting to know what's going on, I figure you can help us out here quite a bit, Jamison.
Yes.
Hopefully.
I mean, trust me, I'm still dooming and glooming too. All of us are there. Just background. I'm a resident still, but I'm applying for sports medicine fellowship right now. I feel like I have a pretty good base in terms of musculoskeletal injuries. And I did a podcast while doing the Skinner Pod specifically about return to play and injuries within the NFL and NBA. So this is kind of right up my alley. And if you guys have listened to us for a while now, I've gone in and talked a lot about injuries that we've had from other players in the past. And obviously with our Thunder podcast as well, I did something on the wrist of Jalen Williams. So this is kind of my thing. I'm obviously very passionate talking about this, and it gets me excited to go through this, but I'm very sad, Bobby, as I go into the details and I learn more and more about the injury. It does scare me.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a big deal. And I know the timing, to some degree, it's helpful given the amount of, weeks off between, you have a bye week and you have Kent State. So you never want to have this sort of thing happen, but having a bye week baked in there and then a cupcake baked in there does help. But everyone's stressed out about that Texas game looming. But
yeah, that's 17
what do you know?
days away, right, Bobby?
Yeah, 17 days away. It's pretty quick. I know some of the initial reporting, I think it was Pete Nakos mentioned that there's optimism in the building for Mateer to return, potentially for Red River, that he's not fully ruled out. What is it about this specific injury that you've kind of heard about? Like, educate the people on, the likelihood of potentially him getting back for Red River, and just what are we dealing with here?
Yeah, so I did a lot of digging on this. So I think Scoop is putting out on their boards that this is a base. So it's a fracture. This is a fracture. This is not like a tear in a ligament from what I've seen so far. So if you guys recall, like Drew Brees is very common injury of like he tore a ligament in his thumb and he couldn't grip a football and he's out for the season. If he had a tore a ligament in his thumb, he was not going to be playing for the rest of the season. This would not be a conversation. This is a fracture in the bone at the base or the bottom metacarpal of his thumb. So if you take your hand out right now and you kind of see the big bones that are in between your fingers and your wrist, those are the metacarpals. So if you follow the one from your thumb down to your wrist and you go right before you hit your wrist, that's the base of that first or the thumb's metacarpal. That's where he fractured it. And there's two kinds of it, very simplistically talking, but there's two kinds of fractures to that area. There's ones that go extend or within the joint, and then there's ones that are outside of the joint. If it's within the joint, John Mateer got this in the first quarter, Bobby. If it was within the joint, if he was throwing balls like he was, I'd be extremely surprised. It is extremely painful to have this Bennett fracture. To the point where I think he would have been out and he would have not been playing. We would have been asking questions already before getting a Tuesday afternoon alert on your phone about this. Now, that makes me think it's a little bit more outside of the joint. He can throw with it, but there's pain there. And the verbiage, and I don't know if you took this as well, Bobby, is like within that report, they were saying like they're considering their options, almost like surgery wasn't even like it wasn't a for sure thing. Right? Did you kind of take it as that too? They were saying like we kind of talked through our options with our surgeons and decided we're going to get surgery. So it wasn't a for sure thing.
Yeah, and I believe the initial reporting I saw from George Stoya of Sooner Scoop was like before OU released their statement was essentially, he's going to miss some time. I think, but no decision has been made on surgery yet. If I recall correctly, the verbiage seemed to leave that open to interpretation before OU came out and just straight up said he was having the surgery.
Exactly. So that makes me think that a fracture doesn't always have to be a surgery. Just because you break a bone doesn't mean you have to have surgery on it. So that means it's likely not displaced. That means it's not broken in different parts going different directions. It's probably just broken where it could heal on its own. But healing on its own is going to take longer for it to heal. So what can we do to accelerate that process to get him back this season? Is to get him into surgery and put something there to allow the bones to fuse together and heal on their own. So the methods of this is really the key of figuring out, is this guy going to be ready to come back in terms of going to OU Texas or South Carolina or 2, 4, 6 weeks? Where does he fall on this? So the traditional method for these kind of fractures is you put pins in them and you immobilize them for 4 weeks. Then you take the pins out and then you start getting your hand starting to move. That's not what we wanted right now. And I don't think that's what they're going to do, because it seems like there's optimism that he could come back sooner than 4 weeks. But 4 weeks seem to be this average that most of the big college football guys have been reporting. So I don't think they're doing anything traditional. And if they were doing it traditional, I think they'd probably just go up the street to OU Health or McBride and they do the surgery there. I don't know, though, because like the way that college football is turning right now, and John Mateer, you're treating him like an NFL player. And if you look at NFL players across the league, they go to the same people for the same injuries. The same hand surgeon does every single one. The same knee surgeon does every single knee. All these because they're just the experts. So that's the way we're treating Mateer right now. But another aspect of that is if we're going to do a traditional surgery, then I think that it would have been much longer recovery. So how is he going to make up time? And I think that what they're going to do is skip the pins. They're not going to do the pins in that 4-week immobilization and instead put like a plate in there. They're probably going to put a plate in there. And this is, I've talked to, like, I have some connections that like, who's a hand surgeon, orthopedic hand surgeon, who said similar things. And I've been talking to also some other people who work in the orthopedic surgery domain, who we've been kind of spitballing back and forth on this. Is the biggest theory would be they put a plate into his thumb to therefore allow for early moving. But the caveat with this, Bobby, is while it is possible to return, earlier, I wouldn't be as optimistic for OU Texas. 17 days from now is a lot to say. I'd say 4 weeks is probably better. And then the hand surgeon I talked to is, with this procedure, your grip is going to be significantly impacted. You're still going to be able to have early movement with this, but your grip is significantly going to be impacted for at least 2 months. So that puts us all the way into the week before LSU. So
yeah. I mean,
throughout
the rest of the season.
That's not a fun thing to hear. So even if he were to come back, he's going to be hampered and he's not going to be right to himself for 2 months.
Which is, I mean, that's not ideal. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, you want him back. Everyone wants to beat Texas. We all want to beat Texas. That's as an OU fan, that game always is high on your priority. But at the end of the day, the schedule is too important, and college football, the way it is, where you can take a loss or two and still try to do something, you don't rush him back for it. I think you have to be careful with getting him too far back and, have that issue with the grip. It is kind of crazy that he beat Auburn with a broken, thumb. I don't know if this is a situation where, when you hurt something, sometimes you just kind of play through it, and then the next day is when the real trouble begins. Is that kind of the case with a thumb here? Like,
if you break a bone, you're feeling it on the spot. It's going to hurt you. But let me tell you something. He's a gamer, and I bet you his adrenaline is going to be a lot bigger than your average Bears. And that's just how he is. And the way he threw the ball for the rest of the game wasn't perfect, but there's not a lot of people out there would see him and be like, well, maybe there's something wrong with his thumb. A lot of people are saying, I think there might be something wrong with his knee. Like, his knee was enwrapping. He had like a knee sprain of some sort. And that's where people are saying he didn't look like he was 100%. Like, the Gabe and Teddy were talking about it on their post game, like looking at him in pregame, looking at how he was. It didn't look like the same Mateer. That was pregame, and then he gets a separate injury. So like, there's two things going on here, and maybe even a blessing in disguise, Bobby. It's like this guy was going to be hobbled, and he could have played better, but this will also allow time for his knee to heal, and hopefully he can get back as close to possible, at as fast as possible, but as good to close to 100% as he can be as possible by taking some more time with having a competent backup like we have in Hawkins.
For sure. And I think realistically, as the not doctor on this podcast, you would like to hope to get him back before Ole Miss. But I will say, I think Michael Hawkins Jr., an experienced guy. Last year, he was a true freshman under a crap offensive coordinator. So definitely a little bit of stress there. But, I don't feel overly confident, but I feel like as far as backup quarterbacks go, that's a guy you want to put the ball in his hands. It's not a Davis Bevel situation.
Yeah, it's not that for sure, which makes it obviously like we're kind of burned a little bit about bringing in a backup quarterback in Texas. I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. But like in summary of this, I think that this surgery will not, and who knows, this guy could come back and he's got early mobilization. He just does not come back close to 100% and just plays in the Texas game. My inkling of just the return to play and all of this is I would be really surprised with it. And if he does, do not anticipate the John Mateer that Think about John Mateer. We keep on making college football 26 references, Bobby, but college football 26, John Mateer comes back, but his hand is red and his throw power is down by 15,
Yeah. Wear and tear is turned up.
Yeah. So, and it's, legitimately like a bunch of wear and a bunch of tear on him at this point. And it's really what it comes down to is there's a scenario in my head to where you say, okay, John Mateer is going to need 4 weeks. I doubt he comes back for Texas. He comes back around Ole Miss time or South Carolina time. But what happens if Michael Hawkins, Bobby, goes out, and this is a lot of cope here, goes out and he's going to do well versus Kent State. Every damn quarterback does well versus Kent State. But what if he goes out there versus Texas, gets 3 or 4 touchdowns and wins us the game? What do you do then? What do you do then when you look at John Mateer and say you could come back, but you're probably 70%, 80% right now, but we got a guy right now who's absolutely balling? Do you just pause for a little bit?
You got to rest the guy. Yeah. I think it's still his job no matter what. Michael Hawkins, I've heard he's improved in camp. You've heard people talk about him. He would have to be pretty damn improved to rival what we saw out of Mateer the past couple of weeks. So if that is the case, then yeah, of course you kind of let him rest, because the strength of this team, even before the Mateer injury, has been the defense. The defense has won, the defense is the reason we won Michigan. The defense is the reason we beat Auburn. So to me, it's a situation where, I think, Hawkins will have had to have not done well, where you really have to get him back in order to kind of rush Mateer back. I think you have to be patient with this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for the medical sickos out there, if it truly is, remember I was talking about if it's inside the joint or outside the joint. My guess is it's outside the joint because of how well he was throwing the ball. If he truly was that big of a baller and it was inside the joint, this Dr. Steven Shin, who's doing this procedure, who is the guy who legitimately has done like Mike Trout, Josh Hamilton, like all these thumb surgeries, like in these big time, like NFL, NHL, like MLB, all these big time athletes. He has this like revolutionary, I guess not revolutionary, but like this kind of cutting edge surgery that he does for inside the joint Bennett fractures that is similar to like a high ankle sprain, but it's a mini tightrope that gets people back quicker. So if it comes out that it is some sort of Bennett fracture, there is a way that he can get people back a little bit quicker as well with that. So I think that going to the surgeon is the way to go. And this is what money buys you. You send your best people to the best people. But I am a little bit still worried either way that if we rush him back too quickly, like I think everyone listening to this I want you to say the John Mateer that I know is not the John Mateer that I'm going to get back if we rush him back quickly. So if you're in that process, like I really hope we have him back for Texas. Are you? Just kind of think introspectively on that one.
Because you're not going to get that John Mateer back.
His grip strength is going to be there. Not at all.
Same guy, same number, but not the same guy.
Yeah, and so like working through what the thumb does for you whenever you're throwing a football. So if you're like, take out your hands and look how you grip a football. Look how important that thumb is. That's why the people who tear that thumb ligament, they're screwed. But with a broken bone, you're going to lose a lot of that pressure that you can use to kind of attach that power grip of holding that ball against the palm of your hand. That thumb is very, very key with that, and really takes a lot of the control. Like your spiral is a lot of the way that you can torque and move that thumb as well. So if you anticipate John Mateer throwing a 40-yard go route to Giovanni Gibson, Satania, right off of this surgery, it's not going to happen. I understand there's been a lot of people saying that he's not throwing enough deep balls, but I guarantee you this injury has bought him an opportunity to continue to throw short and intermediate passes. So do you want that? Do you want a guy that I'm worried about his grip and his thumb function, even if he's able to play, whenever you have a guy as talented as Michael Hawkins behind you? I understand he's not a guy. Michael Hawkins is not a guy that we anticipated that will be in the Heisman talk. Not that level of talent. But he's a guy who's won big games for us. He's a baller, and what he did versus Auburn last year is we cannot forget that. And I think he could still do something like that in Texas. He's had his moments to be a hero. He's been there and done that as a young kid, and he's continued to get better.
Yeah, and now he has, Ben Arbuckle instead of, Seth Luttrell and, old Joe John Finley. It's quite a bit of an upgrade. And as Gerald McCoy kind of mentioned, and I don't share his level of optimism, but some of the best things about Ben Arbuckle's running game has been the quarterback run game, and Hawkins is a little bit more slight than Mateer, but
is that more about the quarterback himself and the running backs themselves, or the scheme?
That's a very good point. But he can scheme up some decent quarterback run game, and I not only that, I mean think about that Auburn game. One of the highlights was a bomb to JJ Hester. You think about that run at the very, very start, but he can sling it from time to time. So I think to me it's one of those things where I'm excited to see what he can do. We didn't see much at all against Temple when you and I were out in Philly, but that's fine. It's late. So I think to me, I'm optimistic that we have a capable quarterback to some degree. Like I said, not a Davis Bevel situation. And hopefully we can see a guy who looks much more mature and has grown since last year.
And you hope really like the scheme, the play calls really doesn't take too much of a dip whenever you change to a Hawkins rather than a Mateer, because like you said, the QB run game is a part of our playbook. You don't have to completely take that out. So that's good. Obviously, I don't believe that Hawkins is going to have the touch that he has, that Mateer has, but I think that you're not going to have to change too much. And I get it. We're a little bit skeptical of how he's done this season because he hasn't had the opportunity. I think that the way with our new management and new coaching staff is we're not in the business of putting out guys that just to get them reps in the second half just because we're up big. We play our starters till the very end to get them as many reps and treat this like an NFL game rather than a college football game. College football, all the time you see the backup quarterback at the beginning of the second half, Bobby, right? How many times in the NFL in blowouts do you actually see that quarterback come out in the third quarter? Slim. Very, very slim.
Just doesn't happen. Yeah.
So I think that I feel confident about Hawkins because I feel like I have to, but more so, like you said, Bobby, like this is not Davis Bevel that I have something to compare it to in the past. And another point that you made earlier, Bobby, on this is like, if we have Hawkins for the next 2 games, is Hawkins, we keep on putting all of this on Hawkins. Hawkins got to win the game. Hawkins got to win the game. The defense has been winning our games, Bobby. Like our offense has done okay. They made some good plays, but the sacking in our defensive line, our front seven is what beat Auburn. It's what pretty much allowed no touchdowns other than a 75-yard run against Michigan. So our defense is just going to have to show out.
Yeah. And the offense just has to be capable. That's what we were saying at the start of the season, before we realized how good Mateer was. But, I don't think you can fully, and I'm not trying to downplay what Mateer is. That guy was insane. He was en route to a Heisman. He was the straw that stirred the drink for sure. But there are aspects of the offense that are improved from last year. This isn't a total reset back to the 2024 Sooners. I think the wide receiver plays better in terms of what you have with Satania. Hopefully getting Javonte Gibson back. We'll see what happens with that. Jared Kanik, of course, has been an excellent piece on that end. And I think you have points of the offensive line that are a lot better. And of course, as I've mentioned multiple times, the play calling's better. So I think there are aspects of the offense that have improved without just John Mateer. Obviously, Mateer is the thing that brings it all together and makes it a lot better. But you'd like to think that Mateer doesn't completely tank the offense, and I think that Hawkins is good enough, and I hope that Hawkins is good enough to operate this thing, even with Mateer, out of the driver's seat for a while.
Yeah, how many good how many good teams have we seen in the past with exceptional star-studded defenses win big-time games with the quarterback that just gets by? And I'm not saying that that's what Hawkins is, but like how many Alabama teams have passed? Did we see Greg McElroy go out there and do things? Did we see what's the guy that Brent Musburger was just goo gagaing over his girlfriend? What was that quarterback's name?
That was AJ McCarron.
AJ McCarron. Like the thing is, like a quarterback, like you said, and we're Oklahoma fans. We need a good quarterback to have happiness. But with this defense right now, we don't need it. We don't need it. It's nice and it's a luxury. And honestly, you might need a good quarterback play to beat Texas. But to win a game versus South Carolina, Ole Miss, I don't think we can win that game through defense alone.
I think it helps. I think it does help with South Carolina having as many issues as they do, especially on the O-line. That's a team that is significantly worse than last year. That's probably definitely the easiest road game, especially with the 11 or noon that time kickoff. And then Ole Miss at home, it's not like you're getting LSU. So, I mean, it's attainable. It looks like, from what I've heard, about a month recovery, from the surgery is how they typically do it. Just from what I've heard, obviously it's a longer term deal and you never know. But if you have to hold them out till Tennessee, I mean, it sets up in a part of the schedule that not
I'd be
easy.
surprised if they did it that long. The only way I'd see that is if Hawkins goes absolutely off and they're just like, screw it.
And I'm putting this as worst case scenario. Like the longest you have to go. It's a point that you hate that this happened in this point of the season because of Texas. But given the buys, given Kent State, it's one that I think you can swallow. And if that means you take a loss, in those 3 tough games, I think you can survive. I think you can survive the playoff run if you go, 4-1 the rest of the way. Am I wrong on that? 3-1.
Here's another thing, Bobby, with this. The committee loves to talk about, oh, we'll give you a free pass for an injury. They've loved that. They've done that in the past.
They've excluded teams because of injuries.
Exactly. Think of Florida State. Yeah, they exclude them because of injuries. Let's just think about a scenario where Oklahoma loses to Texas. We have a very competent quarterback in Hawkins, not as good as Mateer, but maybe this is a scenario where Mateer also would have lost to Texas. We are going to be underdogs in that game, either if we had Mateer or if we had Hawkins, either of them healthy. This is almost a built-in hedge to the committee that says they lost to Texas, but they didn't have Mateer. They have Mateer now. And look at what they did at the end of the season, all hypothetical. If they go out and they beat LSU in that last game of the season, they look good. And we have 2 losses on our schedule, but we had an unhealthy, not at his peak Mateer. That could be an argument that could squeeze us into one of the at-large bids.
Well, a 2-loss OU team would definitely get in, I think. but it definitely makes where it really, really impacts is that 3-loss hypothetical. Because we've said 3 losses should get OU in, but I feel like, especially when you have that storyline, that story to tell of, well, we lost, the Heisman front runner for this long, it weirdly makes that 9-3 even more admittable if you can get it.
Such an easy response. I can just hear the committee saying that after. If obviously, I'm not saying we're making the playoffs, but I'm saying I can close my eyes and I could see them saying, well, they lost John Mateer and then they've done well at the end of the season with him. So those losses don't mean as much. Like, it's just a built-in hedge. And if we beat Texas, Bobby, Texas without Mateer, that is even more to our resume. That is, they beat Texas in a rivalry game, one of the hardest games to go out there and play. And our defense won out and won us the football game.
Yeah. I mean, that would, if that happens, everyone's mind's just blown there. That changes everything.
So it's almost like we lose, we get props without Mateer. We win, we get even higher props without Mateer. And we have a quarterback that we at least have some confidence in. So, but I guarantee you, like a majority of people on there will know Hawkins from his time last year, but they won't know what he's really cooking with.
It's almost like an insurance against it going really wrong. Even if you because I think a close loss against Texas, even with Mateer, that you can hand wave that and move on in this world of college football if you do right by the rest of the schedule. But it sort of covers you from a blowout where it's a blemish. That's the only way a Texas loss can be truly, truly bad on your schedule, is if you look non-competitive. And it sort of gives you a little bit of an umbrella from, getting trashed. Because it's like, well, yeah, Mateer was hurt.
Easy excuse. It's going to be very built in. But what it comes down to,
maybe we're coping here a little bit.
Of course we're coping. That's what we're going to have to do. But like looking at Texas's defense, their front seven, their linebackers are scary. They're really scary. If I am a quarterback and I'm just coming off of surgery, an accelerated, recovery timeline, and I'm looking at Colin Simmons coming at me, oh, God, thank God John Mateer is a confident man, because that is not a fun scenario to come back from. That defense for Sim, very scary.
And I'll say this, John Mateer, it'd be his first time facing that Texas front in the Cotton Bowl. It would not be Michael Hawkins Jr.'s first time. That would be, which is, I think that game for newcomers can be super overwhelming. Regardless of where you've played before, your experience in other big games, it's just different. So obviously Hawkins didn't have much success in the last time at all, so doesn't have a lot to draw on, but I think failure can be just as much of a, educator than anything. And keep in mind, let's say he starts, Arch Manning starts, he's the only one with Red River experience in that end.
Yeah. Let's not forget about the game with Hawkins. He got a lot of flack for how he played last year in the Texas game. But in reality, this dude had no time, and he was unbelievably uncomfortable. The wide receivers never getting open, the offensive line not giving any room, and they completely took away his run game. They completely took it away. 20 carries, 27 yards. And they forced him to be a passer in a situation where he wasn't able to succeed. Now I'm hoping that Mike Luck can get back from his ankle injury. Weewoo can get back from his ankle injury. Fasusi can come back from his ankle injury. And then we can at least have a better and more structured offensive line. A couple of those being high ankles, and those are usually 3 weeks return. And that would kind of perfectly set up to be back and better than what they had shown to be in that Texas game, to where I'd feel better about our offensive line. As well as I think our receiving core is at least 2 tiers better than what we had last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's not the end of the, it sucks. It majorly sucks, but it's not fire and brimstone just yet. Now, ask me how I feel after Red River, and
it's gonna piss me off.
Hell, after ask me how I feel after Red River, and I'll tell you. Well, hell, John Mateer, he hopefully he's coming back soon. So we'll see how it goes.
As Mateer comes back, Red River, and we get our ass beat.
Yes, because then he has more wear and tear from a ferocious defense. So
yeah, there's a part of me that I don't want to be that person, but I'm not cheering for a 17-day return. I think that's a little crazy to say for someone who legitimately, like, you're waiting for your bone to reossify with that plate in place, and you want to come back in 17 days. I guess you could, but it just scares the crap out of me just from what I know. It's just like, good for them on being optimistic, but the way that Brent Venables talked about it in his press conference, I believe he said the words, he should come back sometime this season. We've been in the business of just hyper fixating on Brent Venables' verbiage, and I understand he's a very wordy person to begin with, so we have to take that with a grain of salt. But at the same time, that doesn't tell me of we'll get him back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, sometime this season doesn't feel soon. It feels like it feels like something you say when you're like, it's going to be a while, but he's not out for the season.
Yeah, but
it's like we know he'll be back this season, but he's not. Yeah.
Let's see. Let me find the exact quote on it.
Ron in the comments said Mateer back for the bowl. I don't know if I agree with that.
Back for the bowl, for the Cotton Bowl. I mean, that's just what the optimism is saying, Ron. But it's just
I think is he talking Cotton Bowl or is he talking the bowl game at the end of the year?
I think that's what.
If it's bowl game at the end of the year, he might have re-injured it.
Yeah, Cotton Bowl is the optimism, but I think the take home for me, Bobby, is there's a part of me that just wants Hawkins to play.
Yeah, and I mean, I think because the worst case scenario would without a doubt be him re-injuring it. That the back half of this season, as much as we hate Texas, it matters so much more than winning that golden hat back. There are too many games that matter later on that we need John Mateer healthy for, that you can't risk him getting re-injured for it. You have to find a way to win that, probably without him, because like you said, 17 days to reossify, to even if it's feeling better, that the strength of that bone just probably won't be back. That's just not how bones work, as far as I know. You're the doctor here.
That's a guy who took biology 101.
Biology for non-majors, baby. I'm pretty sure we got to see a Mapuchin in one of those classes. That was a delight.
Why didn't I get that? Oh my gosh!
You were actually learning major things, but
yeah. The bone starts to form like its soft callus formation around like the 1 to 2 week formation. So that's whenever it's hopefully gets to a good enough place where it can go. But just remember that there should be, and I'm assuming, once again, I did a lot of digging on this. I did a lot of digging, talked to a lot of people about thinking that I don't think this is a pin situation. I don't think they're going to put in pins, because this would be 0% chance he goes back for Texas if they put him with pins, because you legitimately have to take out the pins. You take out the pins at 4 weeks and then take them out of the cast. I think this is a plate situation to provide early mobility, versus if this was a inside the joint injury, they would therefore do a similar procedure to that of a high ankle called a mini tightrope that this surgeon is keen to, that can provide some earlier return to play. And that almost essentially that one, if it's an inside the joint, they take the fracture and he essentially lassos it to the bone. And in regards to the joint, it sounds very, very complicated, but this guy, I listened to a talk he did. I'm telling you, I was in the weeds. I listened to mini talks I did, and I found little articles and stuff that he did in the past about these surgeries. This dude sounds like he's been there, done that, because he has. He sounds very, very confident the way he talks. Yeah.
And I mean, that should make everyone comfortable. This is a guy, the surgeon has, like you said, been there, done that. He's worked on Steph Curry before. He is the guy. And props to OU for doing it right.
Yeah, he did Drew Brees. He did one of the better quarterbacks ever. and I understand that was a different injury, but like this dude's been around a thumb. This guy knows he did. Drew Brees, Mike Trout, very, very big time.
Right. Yeah. He's like, who is that? Who is that guy who was like really good with all the knees? Dr. James. Yeah.
Anderson.
Yeah. That guy. Yeah. Like he's like that, but with wrists and thumbs. So good deal. Jameson, any final thoughts on this before we wrap up?
I think that a lot of OU fans are going to be very down about this, but rewind this podcast, listen up to what we said, and realize that this is not the end of the day. Remember what made us so excited about this football team this year is the defense. Mateer has been great, but this defense is what's shifted us as a fan base into thinking about what can we do to keep, well, maybe some people are different, but what can we do to keep this staff intact for another year to keep this going versus what can this team do to get us to the playoffs? That's what the defense has done for us. So focus on the defense and allow the quarterback a little bit of leeway and the offense a little bit of leeway and really lean on our strengths.
Yep. I think you just nailed it dead on there.
I said Anderson. It's Andrews. I knew that didn't sound
Andrews.
Right. It's Andrews.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I said that and I was like, that didn't sound right. It's like Andrews and all the trash do all the big surgeries in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mixed up an A. We're a first name podcast.
First name podcast. But yeah, trust that defense that BV, put together and, just hope it all works out. But it's a long season. And it's gonna be a long couple weeks before Texas for sure, but it has certainly made that week a lot spicier. But we'll see how it goes. So we'll be back tomorrow for our picks of the week with the weekend spread, and do another full Schooner pod on Sunday with me, Jamison, and Ty. Probably get into the schedules there. I got a bone to pick with the SEC schedule makers for sure. Not for this emergency podcast, but in general, yeah. It will also answer the question, will the defense get a turnover against Kent State?
I already responded in the chat saying, if not, we riot.
I mean, surely, right? Surely. Like, come on, it's got to happen.
Just a punch.
We're the reverse Alex Grinch defense. It's like, someone out there was watching Alex Grinch. I was like, please, can we just get the opposite of this? Please God, can we do that? He said, all right, bet. And gave us this where it's great everywhere else, but the turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. All right. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one, everyone. Keep the faith. Boomer Sooner, everybody. And also get better, John. You're not watching this podcast. You really shouldn't be watching this podcast about your thumb. That would be a little weird if you're watching a 38-minute podcast about your own thumb. All right.